Last week, the African leaders attended the 6th summit of the Tokyo International Conference on African Development in Nairobi, Kenya. Alongside that gathering, the African heads of state, including our President Jacob Zuma, also attended the African Peer Review Mechanism meeting. The APRM is a tool that is voluntarily agreed to by the member states of the AU as a self-monitoring mechanism where the African countries evaluate themselves on governance. Now, to tell us more about what happened in that forum is Professor Eddy Maloka. He is the CEO of the African Peer Review Mechanism. It is so good to have you in studio. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Fill us in on what happened in the forum.
Look, the way normally these meetings happen, we have, you could say, three segments. We have the panel. So the leaders, when they establish the African Peer Review Mechanism to evaluate themselves because they want it to be an independent exercise. So they appoint a panel of eminent persons. So the eminent persons, they meet first, they prepare the reports and all that. Like, for example, they were looking at the reports of Chad, they were looking at Senegal, and so on and so on. Then the ministers meet, they meet at the focal points meeting. Then the president is the culmination of the exercise. So they adopted the documents that will have come from the panel and also from their ministers. And the APRM had gone down for the last few years. So we are in the process of revitalizing it. So we have adopted a 5-year strategic plan for the revitalization and beyond. And the APRM is also being, its legal status in the AU system is being clarified. So we also adopted, the president also adopted a legal instrument, which is a statute for the establishment. And of course, there are a number of things. Mozambique presented its second progress report. So countries get evaluated and then they come and present the progress report. So Mozambique was presenting its second progress report by the president. We're supposed to receive the report of the evaluation of Kenya, of Chad, but it has been deferred because of the program issues. So in January now, when they meet, they will do the evaluation reports of Chad, Senegal, Djibouti, and hopefully Sudan, and also Kenya. Okay.
Now, I suppose, as I mentioned in the introduction, at the same time the Tokyo International Conference was taking place on African development. Was it a coincidence that happened, or was it actually planned that they would work alongside each other?
No. There's completely no association.
So it was a mere coincidence.
Not a coincidence as such. It was an organized coincidence in that we normally meet on the margins of the summits of the African Union.
Yeah.
So we are supposed to meet in Kigali. But the heads of state had agreed previously that they want to have a close retreat before they meet for their normal working session. So this then interfered with some of the scheduling in Kigali, and then President Kenyatta then ruled that since we have this problem, he'll anyway be hosting a number of heads of states for TICAD. So he then said that we'll meet on the margins of the TICAD meeting. So that's how it happened. That's why we're there. Yeah.
Now, we know that the objectives of the ARPM are to foster the adoption of policies, standards, and practices that lead to political stability. With so much instability taking place all over Africa's 5 regions, how would you say that the APRM has actually fared so far?
Look, APRM started very well. The APRM came out of NEPAD. When we established, you see, the APRM, NEPAD, and African Union came together at the same time. When we were transforming the OAU into the AU, what is the African Union, we also developed the NEPAD, which is a development program of the African Union. And out of it then was born the African Peer Review Mechanism as a governance tool. But what we do with the APRM, Africa is being reviewed by a lot of agencies and so. But what is particular about our method is that it's the leaders themselves. Like, for example, when Mozambique presented its second report now in Nairobi, the heads of state, they intervene. They say, my brother, you are doing very well. Are you also looking at this issue? Then he says, yes, I'm looking at it, I'll work on it more. And so they talk to each other, but the review process itself is very thorough. It involves the people at country level. You have a focal point, you have a national governing council, and the reviews are done by the national governing. So when a country decides, that's why we emphasize the voluntary mechanism. When a country decides to join the APRM, we now have 35 member countries out of 54 African member countries, AU member countries. It's a big step for that country. So that country opens itself to being reviewed and peer reviewed by peers.
I mean, you know, when you look at some of the presidents and how they talk about it, I'm reading from President Uhuru Kenyatta. I mean, he was basically saying that the APRM is the best tool to review African countries as they have similar challenges and they have a similar background. It's not for Western countries to review them. It's for African countries. He went on to say that since the first review was done to the country in 2006, Kenya has made tremendous progress in terms of good governance. So Kenya, would you highlight them as a good example?
Yes, of course. Kenya, well, the president himself as a person is leading the mechanism very well since he became our chair. But Kenya went into did a review, and then out of the review, we develop what we call a national plan of action. So the country itself identified these are the things that we want to do. We want to review the constitution, we want to introduce this legislation, want to do the following things. Then they implement that. So what the president was talking about is that since Kenya was reviewed in 2000, so Kenya has been informed in many of the measures that they have taken by what came out of their national plan of action, and they are, in their view, will be doing a second review now which will assess the extent to which they have implemented their plan of action. In their view, they think that they've gone a long way in implementing their national plan of action, because some of it actually results in constitutional amendments.
Yeah. I mean, Sierra Leone, let's have a look at them, because I know that they did get a little bit of attention at this, and they're saying that the APRM, the pre-summit, came to a successful conclusion in Nairobi, and they were very, very happy with Sierra Leone. Talk to us about some of the events there in that country and what unfolded during this review.
Look, Sierra Leone is one of our best case, or what we call the good practice, because they have a ministry just on APRM, the Ministry of Governance and Politics, something like that.
Completely dedicated
to. They came to our meeting with a very strong delegation comprising civil society, which is led by Professor Blah, who is a very eminent Sierra Leone personality. But they also came with a member of the opposition, because Parliament is also involved. So they also came to the meeting with the oversight. But what they did, they then said, because they are quite advanced with their APRM structures, which are now cascading to the district level, they have a neighbor, Liberia.
Yeah.
So Liberia now is preparing to go for its first mission in the review mission next year. So they then requested us to put them together with Liberia. We spent about over an hour plus, and them sharing their best practice example with Liberia, saying this is how we set up the national structures, this is how we did our review, and so on. And then, of course, if you go into their report, you will see quite a number of measures which they in Sierra Leone were introduced in their own country. And President Nkrumah himself, personal commitment to making sure that the things that were picked up in their review are implemented. It's very, very important.
How's it been for you going into this? Because I mean, as you began by saying, you took over this position, and the African peer review mechanism was basically dormant for 4 years before you took this position. Has it been quite a difficult task to revive this? Because, in essence, what it stands for is amazing, but the reality is it just fizzled out. But this rebirth, this reawakening, I mean, it must be very difficult for you.
Well, it was difficult when I started more than 6 months ago. It's better now. Now we have the decision.
6 months is still a short time.
And then we get our contribution comes from member states. So countries are receiving us very well. They are beginning to pay. But, I was maybe unfortunate, but I was part of the team that started this whole process. Yeah. It is the technical level.
Yeah.
I was there when we were doing the transition from the OAU to the... So we are part of the technical teams. I was in the team that was involved with NEPAD, also with the formation of APRM. So when we were asked to make ourselves available and to come and make a contribution, it was something compatible with the kind of work that we've been doing on the continent, because you need these institutions for the kind of Africa that we want. Good governance is very key and essential to the development of our continent, and in many cases it's the cause of the problems we have of peace and security in a number of our countries. So when you get the peace and security package correct, institutions, legislation, constitutionalism and so on, you create conditions for the development of that country, but you also create an inclusive society so people don't have to resort to arms if they have some discontent or some whatever. So the society itself will have within it remedial avenues for remedy and for listening to different, because that's what good governance is all about. That if you have a problem with me as a head of state, you don't have to take up arms against me. You can take me to court. You can do so. There are all these remedial measures which are available to people. So good governance is very key and essential to the Africa that we really want.
Just on a closing note, and at the end of this review mechanism and the conference that was held, I mean, the idea is for an external body to go into a country and have a look at their African peers, review how it's working, see what the president is doing in those countries. Are most African countries allowing this? Are they open to this now?
No, it's a peer-based and a self-assessment based. So it's the other way around. So we don't come in as a group of police and come and start opening doors and say, you, what are you doing? No, no, no. A country starts the review process itself through the National Governing Council. And they prepare what they call the self-assessment report. Like Kenya now has given us self-assessment. So when we send our team, is the verification. And
so that's just to verify the report that they give you?
Yes, and then we engage with them. We send we call them the APRM task force. They go in as a group of experts, and then they go in, they work with the country. We go to provinces, we go even to the district, we meet with communities. Then we write our own report. Then we send it to you as a government. Then the government engages, say, no, here we agree, here we don't. But even in areas where if there is a disagreement with the government, it's only around the facts that we can of course verify. But if it's something of an opinion, normally the opinions of the mechanism prevail.
Yeah, just finally on a closing note, I mean, I know that I said that was the previous question, was going to be a closing note, but if some of the reviews do find that there are problems in the country, are they open to your task team going in, making changes or discussing it and intervening?
Yes, we come first at the invitation of
they are open to it, going forward, because it has stalled, remember,
and
for a while.
even during the review process, President Idris Deby, his focal point, the minister,
Good.
They don't interfere with our exercise. We go there, we work, they make facilities available. They only express their view. At the end, when we prepare our report, they say, but my brother, here, this is too strong, we don't agree. Then we have that conversation. Excellent. But they don't interfere with the work of the mechanism.
Well, listen, we continue to support you in this big position. Keep up the great work.
And keep up your own great work. You're doing very good for
Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor.
Yeah,
Professor Eddy Maloka, he, of course, is the CEO of the African Peer Review Mechanism. And you'll remember that APRM, our president was there and attended it, wrapped up their meeting. And it's good to see that this has now got a lot more vigor going after a bit of a 4-year break. So we're happy to see this review mechanism back in action under the leadership of a great South African. All right, let us go back to Palesa now. I believe that we're going to continue